Oh, Martin, delighted to be chatting to you. How was you, sir?
How are you, Terry? I'm fantastic. It must have been a good omen just about a minute before you called. There was a massive thunderstorm that went through
Wow.
here,
Yeah.
torrential rain, lightning.
Yeah.
I was starting to take it personally, but that's now blown over. So hopefully, keep the power on. Everything will be good here. So
So it's not a sign then from above.
yeah, above, below, I'm not sure. It could be a sign from either direction, but we'll see.
Uh, how's life then? Is it pronounced Elora? Elora, where you are.
Elora, yes, yes. It was, I believe, if I know my history here, Elora is a village just almost connected to a town called Fergus, which was one of the original Scottish settlements in
Oh, yeah.
middle Canada.
Yeah.
And Elora is a village off to it and a bit snooty. They don't like to associate with the Fergus people, so it's a bit of an arts community, writers,
Yeah.
painters, all sorts of stuff
Yeah.
until I came along and I'm just, I don't know where I fit into that picture. So,
I like what you say on the profile thing on Amazon. You were exiled to the town because you couldn't skate.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, when I was born in England in
Rugby. Oh, yeah.
Rugby, yeah, Rugby, Warwickshire, and I lived there till I was 7, and then that was around 1969, and my parents chose. If you know your history well enough in England, that in and around that time there was this massive call to the world from Canada saying we need people. Australia and Canada are
Yeah.
both the same. There was this automatic immigration thing, and my father flipped a coin. Apparently
Yeah.
it's a true story. Flipped a coin,
Yeah.
Australia or Canada, and he took a job in Canada. I don't think I'll ever forgive him for that because Australia is sunny all the time and
Warm.
stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, but nonetheless, yeah, so I arrived here when I was 7. I had a funny complexion and a funny voice, so who's this pale kid with the odd, lingo and stuff. And so there, of course, do you skate? Do you play hockey? So of course I thought hockey was with a stick and a ball and, on grass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame. So my whole life I've never been able to skate.
Yeah.
And so here I am. Here I am in Elora, surrounded by cows, and just doing great. So,
Brilliant. Yeah. Before we talk about Nothing Sacred, your new novel,
mm,
tell us what you
mm.
do for fun, for hobbies wise, apart from skating or not skating.
I have a lot of the standard hobbies that most people would have. In terms of collecting things, I collect books,
Books. Yeah.
which I'm
Brilliant bookshelf.
surrounded by here.
Yeah. It's
Yep,
impressive.
I like your standard musical influences like Mormon death metal and things like that. I enjoy that a lot. You familiar with Mormon death metal? I'm assuming over there.
No.
It's the Mormon church tabernacle, but they get all dressed up in black and they
Yeah.
scream around and stuff. I'm totally kidding you. There's no such thing as that, but I thought I'd throw that in. I collect birds. I
Yeah.
like to keep them outside
Oh,
most
yeah.
of the time,
Yeah.
so they're they're around, and my book also mentions that I collect pottery-based weapons. Pottery-based weapons, of course, are
What?
uh, are hard to come by, of course, because they shatter very easily. So
Yeah.
they're not easy to find around the world. So I don't have any yet, but I intend on collecting,
Okay.
something of that nature. So
Yeah.
yeah, so usual stuff, right,
Yeah.
Terry? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
normal
Normal.
things that
Every
that
day.
normal human beings would collect, I would assume. Right? So
Cans of Guinness maybe as well.
cans of Guinness whenever I'm feeling poorly, because it's a great medicine. And I feel poorly a lot, generally 3 to 4 times a day. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a wonderful medicine, grows hair in your chest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stout.
just great. Stout, yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
take the kid out of Britain, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't you can't take the Guinness away from him. So because I am technically, Terry, I should point out, I am Irish, to be
Hmm.
honest with you,
Yeah.
all the way down through the roots.
Oh,
So
yeah.
my mother was from Londonderry. My father was a Brit, but when you trace him back about 4 generations, he was from Ireland. His family was from Ireland. So
Hmm.
this is where I get my writing, storytelling, and Guinness drinking from. Is those roots.
Hmm. A long tradition of storytelling.
Mm,
Another thing on your profile, it says that you're a lover of dogs, but not literally, which is useful.
No, that's see that I don't find a lot of things wrong, but that's probably in the wrong category. So yeah, but I do have two little fur babies, and they get me through the day. Love
Yeah,
them very, very much. So
yeah. But before we talk about your book, well, we've mentioned your
mm.
hobbies. Tell us about what happened as a part-time university lecturer, Montreal's McGill University.
Well,
What?
yeah, oh, sorry, Terry. No,
No, I was going to
I
ask what
interrupted.
subject, what subjects you were teaching.
Well, you see, I had this other life for 30 years. It was a bad move on my part because instead of going into writing, which I wanted to do since I was a little kid, everybody told me, there's no money in writing.
Yeah,
You shouldn't go into writing. You'll starve. You'll be a starving artist and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I one of those people that likes security, so I didn't. And there's a lesson out there, kids. Follow your dreams. Go for it. I should have, because I've never been happier in my life than the last 4 or 5 years. I've been writing and very much enjoying life. But prior to that, I worked my way up a corporate ladder like other people do. I was in corporate business for a long, long time over those 30 years, and reached the pinnacle, some would say, of the corporate world. It's not very nice. It's not a nice place to be.
yeah,
People
yes,
are not nice.
yeah,
And it kind of robs you of your soul a little bit. During that period, the last 8 years that I was in the corporate world, I was asked by McGill University in Montreal
mm.
to lecture and do seminars on international business,
Oh,
because
okay.
the companies I was working with and worked for were all Japanese-based companies. So I learned very quickly the ins and outs of business format and acumen from a Asian perspective as well as a North American perspective. So
Yeah,
I gave lessons and taught on that. So that's where that came from, and I did that concurrently with while I was in the business world
mm,
and doing corporate management. But no, I say obviously tongue in cheek. Just a lot of what I say is tongue in cheek. But
okay.
I really do wish I'd have just followed those.
Mm,
I'd have not listened to the naysayers and just
yeah,
said, just go right. Just
yeah.
who knows where it would have went to, but I'd have been happier, I think.
The work at the university, did that involve a lot of writing, research, and writing notes up? And
Not that much. What they did is they would give me a curriculum.
yeah,
We want to cover these
yeah,
particular points. You structure your lectures however you want to do it, and speak from personal experience, speak from standard business acumen or business modeling and stuff, and address these points. And as long as you've addressed them, it's within the curriculum, and
mm,
we present it any way you wish. So,
mm,
as you might uh, realize, I added a little bit of humor
mm.
to my classes. So they were. I'm not bragging here, but I was voted a few years in a row the favorite instructor, and that's what I was going for. Of course,
Yeah,
the brownie points. So.
yeah.
But I did enjoy it so much, working with the young people and stuff.
Mm. Okay, yeah. We move on to talk about your novel then, Divine
Hmm.
Comedy. Tell me,
Hmm.
tell me all about. Tell me what genre this is. I've started reading it today, so I know, but I'm asking you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I've seen interviews before. So people normally do this. They
Yeah,
go, plug their book.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I actually brought it for a different reason, but we'll go into that later. But um, genre, well, it's fiction.
yeah.
It's fictional humor. It is intended to be funny. There's two layers to it. You can buy this book. You can read through it. You can have a real good laugh. I
Mm,
certainly hope,
yeah,
and that's the end of it. Or you can dig a little deeper between the lines, because there's a bit of philosophy in here. There's a lot of science in here, fun science.
yeah.
There's a little bit of cosmology and physics and religious history and various things like that. However, no one's going to get bowled over by those. It's
Mm,
not a dreary book by any means,
yeah.
and it's just I like the background in it to be as factual as possible. But in all rights, it's a comedy, and it was written to a certain degree. The style I wrote it in was short chapters and designed scene by scene, so it could be adapted to a screenplay as quickly as possible.
I was going to ask you that very question. Have you written screenplays? Does it exist?
I have not written the screenplay. I'll be totally honest with you. That's a very different discipline that I'm not 100% sure yet I understand or would want to take a stab at that. I think as the book progresses, it's been very successful so far, beyond my actual imagination.
Brilliant.
And I'm thrilled with that. And I think that in speaking with my editor in England and various other people, that we're going to get it in front of a few screenplay writers, and we're building up some contacts at various places, both sides of the pond, to see if we can get it in front of a few people. So.
So I started reading this today, and it does read very cinematically. It's
good.
Visual. It's a page turner. You say the short chapters. I think that adds to a book being a page turner. Quickly, and then you move on to the next scene.
Yes, it's obviously I can't take credit for that style. I mean, if you want a very well-known name that writes that way, it would be Dan Brown.
Oh yeah.
And
Angel
Da Vinci
Demons.
Code, right? And those chapters are very short, and they keep you guessing. And you're lying in bed, and it's 11:30, and you're going, "Well, one more chapter." There are only 2 more pages, only 3 more pages, and it's. But it is very much cinematic too, because it switches scenes constantly, like a soap opera or something like that. So.
Yeah. Some of the reviews have compared it to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Douglas Adams book. But what I've read, I was thinking of a comparison with Catch-22, the Joseph Heller classic.
Very interesting.
Not absurd, but this sort of flipping, common sense flipping things, and sort of written sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Although I'd never put the 2 and 2 together, but I do adore that book. But the theater of the absurd, so to speak, is what this book and what all my writing in general, my short stories and other things are about. Is this absurdity, this thing we call life, And I don't. I'm sorry to say, for anyone looking in, going, "Oh, you should take things more seriously." I don't, and I can't, and I didn't even when I was in the corporate world, which doesn't go down too well with too many people, and I don't now, because I think it's all very, very silly. No matter what level you're looking at it, whether we get up in the morning and we go and forage for berries, or whether we get up in the morning and we sit in traffic and we go count up numbers on a desk all day, it's a bit silly. The whole thing's a bit silly, but I actually kind of like that, and that's why you brought up Douglas Adams, my hero. The book is dedicated to Douglas Adams, and he changed my life at a very young age. The Hitchhikers trilogy, or all 5 books of the trilogy, totally changed my life, because more than anything, he could impress upon you that it is a bit silly. It doesn't really matter. I think of, if I can quote something very quickly, in the first Hitchhikers book, Ford Prefect, he informed Arthur Dent that the world had been destroyed, the earth had been blown up. And Arthur said, "Well, I must tell you, I'm not very happy about that." And it's that type of deeply UK-based humor, that sardonic approach to life, that I just adored, of just not taking anything overly seriously. And obviously that's taking it to the extreme, but nonetheless, that's always how I've written, is observational humor from the perspective of this is quite silly when you look at it, when you stand back and you look at it.
I think that one of the essence of good comedy is it's sort of the link with tragedy. Like I'm thinking, I don't know, for instance, what the old television series Steptoe and Son. That was a comedy, but it was always one step just beyond that bit of a tragic setting scenario.
Course. Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, even the nature of nothing sacred is. I mean, as you'll find out, or maybe you found out already, the lead character, Earl Grey, like the tea.
I was going to ask about
that. He's. I mean, the book starts out explaining roughly that this man's had a really crappy life. He's depressed, he's divorced, he's got the worst job in the world, dead end job. He's working for a newspaper reporter. By the way, this is set in 2005, so sort of pre-digital, what we're doing right now. So there were still newspaper reporters, but he, of course, was a lifestyle reporter. So he had to do school openings and charities and local hockey games and stuff. And he was just, you couldn't get any lower than this guy was. And there being the tragedy, looking for the salvation being the fact that, above all, he was an atheist. He didn't believe in any of this. He didn't believe in any value or purpose to this whole process. And what does he get? He gets an assignment to fly to Phoenix to interview a guy who says he's God and is doing miracles. So I mean, you're right. There has to be a tragic element somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
So you have the juxtaposition of saying this is funny. Yeah.
It was the reason for setting it that period. As I was reading, I read, well, linked with today's news worldwide, Prince Charles marries Camilla. I thought, what is there? Does that? I don't know. Is that spoiling the end somewhere? Is the reason why you've set it in that?
It's not. I wanted to avoid the modern day or current day approach of everything is tweeted, everything is
newspapers online,
digital, online, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted there to be a little bit of time gaps between something happening and the world knowing about it. You know, I remember the mid 2000s very, very well. I write a lot in the book about Earl's BlackBerry because I was a BlackBerry hotshot, man. I could spin that thing and pop it in and type like there was no tomorrow. I can't use these damn things now with the screen if you paid me. Like it's impossible. I'm all thumbs, but my BlackBerry, man, I could bring down 6 shooters like that and spin it and pop it back in, and I was good to go. But I mean, this is pre-text days too. This is just people emailed each other. They had conversations with each other, you know. And so I wanted to remove that. This guy claiming to be God's landed in the desert near Phoenix. Bang, the world knows about it. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted Earl to be the conveyance, if you will, of this message to everybody, and hence he is elected to be the. As you'll see, I'm not giving anything away. He's elected by the press to be the one guy to go into this hospital room and interview God, and it's quite amusing. The atheist interviews God. It's a nice little back and forth.
Now that's an excellent explanation. I can see it clearly. Imagine that now, the Twitter world. You know, God lands somewhere. You know, the world would know about it. Earl Grey, that obviously related to the tea. Did you ever think of making him an Englishman in America, an Englishman in New York, or?
It is so fascinating. You know, me being it's a great question. Let me explain that. My initial thought was to have him as a Brit.
Yeah.
And you know, growing up in England, knowing and still being, you know, very fond of the country and the various dialects and people around and such as that. And I looked at making him a Brit early. This is probably when the book was still in notebook form where I was just jotting stuff down. And I thought, no, what I need more than anything is I need, again, this juxtaposition between freezing his butt off every winter for 6 months
in Canada
and going to Phoenix, which is perpetually hot, warm, in drought or whatever. Because there's a little premise in here. Again, it's not a spoiler, where the only reason he accepts the job when it's forced upon him is he thought, well, at least I'll get the hell out of here for a week, you know, in the middle of minus 20-degree weather where my hands are sticking to the steering wheel and stuff like that. So I sort of needed that. I also needed that play on the American culture and the Canadian culture. Because if you ask an American, they'll tell you we're all the same. If you ask a Canadian, they'll go, oh my God, no. Not even remotely close are we Americans in any way, shape, or form. So, and they don't necessarily mean it as a slight. They're just saying it's the Americans that don't realize how different a country this is up here. And there's a lot of that in the book. There's a tremendous amount of Earl bumping heads with the sort of the American culture.
Okay. The book itself, it's a hefty, 436 pages. You showed me before it. Can you hold that up for 20 seconds?
Sure. Sure.
I was thinking about the weight of it, like Thor's hammer.
So this is actually why I brought it with me, because I wanted to show you something, and especially for your readers who are perhaps a little afraid to commit to a book that long.
I love a book that long. It's, you know, more out of it, more for your money.
That's true. Point I wanted to make, you absolutely can't see this, I'm sure, on screen, but it's 333 pages, which is a normal size novel of about 100,000 words. Where the 400 and change is coming from, at first I thought it was a typo, but then I realized that the ebook, I guess, is typeset differently, and it has that many pages in it. But from a pure, is this a monster? Is this another War and Peace? No, it's a standard book of standard length and stuff. I think it's just the way, as you mentioned, 400 and something is probably the way it's typeset in shorter versions, to fit a Kindle or whatever it is that you're going to be reading it with. But yeah, it's still a good sized novel, but I think it goes fast. It flows fast. So.
Yeah. Is there a reason you have a Kindle version and the hardcover? Is there a reason why you haven't released the paperback as yet?
I looked at both. I spoke with the publisher at length about this.
It's Matador, is it?
Matador, which is an imprint of Troubadour, Troubadour Publishing, and they said, well, do a paperback and do an ebook. Okay, to keep the cost down and blah, 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 blah. Now, Nothing Sacred is a trilogy. There's 2 more books to come after this.
That was my next question. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a trilogy. The second book is basically written, but not edited yet. So it's a ways off still, probably 4 or 5 months off, but that's fine. I want to give Nothing Sacred a chance to build an audience. But that being said, the question about the paperback, I thought to myself, being the ultimate pessimist, perhaps a bit like Earl Grey, I said, well, what if this is the one and only book I ever get out there? What if it's a complete flop and it goes nowhere? At least I want a hardcover book for prosperity, for my shelf, to say, hey, I did that, check it off the bucket list and move on. And they told me, they said, that's fine, but don't do both. Don't do paperback and hardcover, because first of all, you're going to see about 70% of your sales will be in ebook. That's sort of the ratio now. And they said the reason most people do paperback and ebook is because the costs are a little bit less in a paperback, and it's an easier format, stuff like that. If it were my second book, and it's quite likely to be my second book, it'll probably be paperback on the second or third version. But so I understand your point. This was pure ego on my part that wanted my first book to come out in hardback, and we'll see. Well, I may do it for the second one. I may shift to paperback if there's more a demand. But certainly, what I'm seeing too is that the ebook is moving very, very well. And I actually make a tiny profit on ebooks as opposed to the hardcover, which is a lesson in charity. So
Oh. Have you got an audio version in the pipeline?
No, I don't. I figured that is something I would delve into if there was a big enough audience for the book, if it had built to a certain level. I want one. There's a lot to do there in recording one, picking the right voice, picking the person to do it. I know exactly who I want to do it, but picking the person, paying the person to do it, and so I really wanted to establish the story out there first before we went with. I'll probably add an audio version to this, but not at this moment.
Okay.
But I think David Attenborough would be great for this. I just want to hear him swear over and over again as he reads this thing. I think it would be very well done.
That would sell, wouldn't it? That would fly off the shelves.
David swears. Yes, it'd be front page.
Have you had any kind of backlash from the Catholic Church or any religious bodies? I'm just thinking in terms of the likes of Monty Python's Life of Brian. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have been so successful if it hadn't have had a backlash.
If you're asking, has the Pope has not called. And if you're listening, Pope, I'm not Catholic, but I'm more than willing to take your call if you want to, shoot the crap and talk for a while. No, I would think, I look at it this way. Is the book irreverent? No, it is not. And I would ask people not to judge it without reading it. And we live in a society where people will look at a front cover or a concept or one word and say, ban it. It's blasphemous. It's this, it's that. It's none of those things. Of course, Earl is an atheist, and the whole book is about him meeting someone who claims to be God, and perhaps isn't at the end. And there's a lot of reasons to read this over and above the humor in it. But I would say to anybody that gets their nose out of joint of the simplest little thing, read it then.
Mm-hmm.
But you really have nothing to say one way or another if you haven't read it, because it's not what you think. And there is a massive surprise ending to this thing. So maybe it's worth to read, before you start throwing it around in bonfires and say that, that Satan himself wrote this thing. I know Satan himself didn't, because I checked with him first, and he had never written anything of this basis. So this is all mine.
Okay. On your website, you've got links on there for Twitter, and there's a Facebook link as well. What social media platform will work best for you for promotion? Is it Twitter?
Twitter, I got on Twitter about 6 months before the book was due to come out, because the publisher wanted me to build. I'd never been on social media before. I'm one of those Luddites that had no clue what it's supposed to do. But so I built, at their request, I built it. It was there where I met Michelle.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, a joint friend of ours, and I built that up nicely, and that has done very, very well. What I've noticed though is that someone kept insisting that I should be on Instagram, which I am, but not a lot of followers. It's mostly friends and family on that. But Facebook has done very, very well for the book. And once I learned how to use their groups, so that I could target very specific things: funny books, readers, religious humor, whatever it is. There's thousands of these groups. Maybe they don't have many followers, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, but that's massive in the book world to be able to target directly to them. And I've found that to be the best now, even though Twitter has been very, very good to me.
Yeah. I totally agree. I speak to so many writers, and I don't think a lot of them are making full use of Facebook. Because as you say, people forget that the groups in there. For instance, a novel I wrote, it's based in Liverpool, Chilwell, 1970s. And there's loads of groups. There's local Liverpool groups. There's a history of the 70s groups.
Yeah.
It takes 5 minutes to do a quick search, and you will find at least 10 groups that are there as an audience for your work.
Yeah. Well, it's actually created a lot of work for me on a daily basis, because I can't tell you. I have actually no idea how many groups I've got, but I've got Python loving groups. I've got people who love Terry Pratchett. I've got Neil Gaiman fan clubs that love this kind of writing. I've got, as well as just the countless number of book this, book that, best book, read this, top 10 kind of groups that I've got in there. A few Catholic fan clubs, I throw it in there occasionally just to see if someone will bite at it or at least yell at me. So, either way, someone said, but any press is good press. So sure, hate it, love it, just let me know.
So I chatted to Dominic McGill a couple of weeks ago. He wrote the Doc Martin television series. And I just mooching around on Facebook, and I thought, I'll see what groups are here. And there's a Doc Martin appreciation group with something like 80,000 members within there.
Wow.
So it was a great advertisement, that interview.
I know you're busy, Terry, but when we're done, if you just give him a quick call about the screenplay, and we'll go from there. And, you'll get a massive credit for that, and everybody wins. And that's it, isn't it? I mean, you look at our traditional book world or book industry that we're in right now, and it's crazy. Those. What is it, down to about 5 now, super international, large traditional publishers will not look at you. They won't look at you.
Isn't there a court case in America, I think, trying to stop the monopoly of the major book?
I don't know if there's actually a court case, but I can understand why. I mean, as any writer knows, when you try to take this somewhere, a new author has a snowball's chance in hell of getting their attention. And there's one caveat to that. There's one exception to that, and that is that you're already famous before you go. Then they want you. If you're Conway West and you want to write a book, they're all over you. But if you're Martin Featherston, who's wrote something, they're like, no chance. And that's why, conversely, the agents won't talk to you, because they have limited places to sell this, and you're an unknown quantity, and they're not going to take the risk. And so this book world, you can get me going on this, but I will stop. it was new to me coming into this. I've been writing forever, but the industry was new when I came into it. It's got to change, Terry. It's got to change. There's so many creative, wonderful people out there that write some really, really good stuff, and they're never looked at, never. And it's really a shame.
I think that's one of the reasons why Amazon exists. There's something like 6 million titles on there, and in a way, it's sort of, instead of getting past the gatekeepers of the publishers and the literary agents, in a way, it's let the public decide. If the book's going to be a success, it has to be, by definition, a good read.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. The other side of that coin is that now that anyone with tiny bit of money in their wallet can produce a book, there's also, I won't use the actual term because you'll have to bleep it, but
that's right.
let's call it, well, the industry calls it a shit volcano. And it is just a volcano of bad writing that's out there, because somebody can write their own, typeset their own with a piece of software, and then fire it out and list it on there. So you've got that end, which doesn't do anyone any favors in terms of that industry. And then you got the other end that, unless you can prove yourself successful, that's the funny part. That it's not that funny, but if my book or somebody else's book started to sell in the umpteenth thousands, they'd be knocking on your door. Can we have the rights to that? Can we have the rights to the second book and the third book? After you've done all the work, after you've put heart and soul into it for a year or two, then they might have a look at you. It's crazy.
It's like going to the bank for a loan and thinking, if you don't need the loan that much, they will give you the loan. But if you're desperate, you've got nothing, no chance.
Oh my Lord! Yeah, you want people to offer you money as a loan, pay off your mortgage. They'll be all over you. Every day you're going to get a call. Would you like $100,000 to fix your basement or something? So it's been, even in my corporate days when I was up on stage or doing whatever I was doing, I never liked scripts. I never liked to read a speech or whatever. I just needed a point form here and there to understand where I was going to go. But I like the way you do this. It is wonderful. I enjoyed Michelle's presentation or video interview you did very, very much. It's wonderful. I'm enjoying your site. So
thanks.
Yeah, keep up the great work. It's wonderful.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, thanks for that.
Yeah.
But for now, Martin, let's keep in touch as we have been on Twitter.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I look forward to it. And I thank you very much for your time. And I'd say hi to your audience out there, and hope you'll give it a shot.
Definitely.